My name is Oliver Pickard, and I've always dreamed of building my own car, together with my aerospace engineer and rallyist dad, Andrew.
Hello.
I found the perfect project.
This is my Cox GTM.
The remains of one of only 800 made.
And that looks bad, but when you look at it from the inside, it's even worse.
Crashed, fire damaged, rusted, unrestorable. We aren't just modifying, but completely re-engineering. We aren't just bolting on parts, we are making the tools that fabricate the parts to build my dream car. Bespoke, one of one. This is Project Mosquito. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the workshop. Today is a historic landmark episode. It's only taken us 54 videos. In this video, this car will sit on its wheels for the very first time.
On all four wheels.
On all four wheels, yes. Right, let's do this.
Yeah, okay, let's get cracking.
We joke about buying parts, but we've actually bought quite a lot for this video. We've bought new adjuster bolts for the lower control arms from Boffy Racing in the UK, OEM Mazda ones, and we've bought a load of new hardware, haven't we? Nuts and bolts and stuff. And it's really satisfying to have everything clean. Tighten until Dad clicks. Right, the royal we, Dad, has put these bottom wishbones on, and he's done it with the adjusters to the bottom. And that's so that when we finally do an alignment proper, we'll put the adjusters to the top, and we'll put a little divot, won't we? Put a centre pot mark in to where we've actually aligned everything to. But until it's all aligned, we need to visually see that no one of us hasn't aligned it and know it's not all lined up. So that's why we've put the adjusters to the bottom.
So when you're building your suspension, obviously you put the bolts in, you put the nuts on, don't tighten them up, right? Because if you tighten them up at full droop, what it does, it grabs the bush in the centre. And as the car's weight goes down, it twists the rubber inside. And in a couple of thousand miles, the centre bush will tear away from the rubber. So it's super important. Tighten them up. Make sure when you lift the suspension, the inner bushes turn.
It's not binding.
It's not binding. When the car sits on its wheels, all right, back it, drive it forward and reverse a couple of times.
Yeah.
Just put the brakes on, get the suspension to settle down, and only then tighten these bolts up properly to the proper torque.
That's something that I bet most places that like use mechanics and stuff don't do. I bet most just get it to a height and then tighten it all up.
Yeah. But once it's at right height, it's then when you tighten it up, because that's where it spends most of its time when it's sat. So when it's sat, it's not under stress.
Right.
It's only under stress when it moves either up or down.
Today I learned. That's the thing. I've never owned a car with double wishbone suspension. I mean, most people have never owned a car with double wishbone.
This goes for any bush in your car. You know, whether it be a tie rod or
a panhard rod or
anything. Yeah, if it's not in its correct position and you tighten that centre bush up so it's solid, that rubber then has to twist through all this motion.
Yeah, and it will bind.
No, it'll snap it.
Oh,
it'll tear the rubber bush. Yeah. It'll tear the rubber bush away from the centre pin.
Yeah, because it's under way too much torsion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because normally it's meant to. Its elastic limit is like half.
Oh.
The little rubber in the little rubber bush tears from the centre point, and it destroys the bush in no time. So what you need to do is only tighten these points up when your car is settled on its suspension.
Yeah.
So even drive it backwards and forwards in and out your garage.
Obviously not on the public road.
Not on the public roads. Yeah.
No, we have to say that.
Yeah. Just let it,
somebody will.
Yeah, let it settle on its suspension.
Yeah.
Right. When you need everything's correct with its fuel, bit of it, maybe even some fueling.
Yeah.
Right. So it's sat at its normal right height, and then and only then tighten these up. Otherwise, it just destroys your bushes.
Right. We've got a set of brand new split pins as well, which sounds like a weird thing to be enthusiastic about, but all of these things all add up. All this stuff, even like little split pins and washers and all that, it all costs money, and it feels really nice to use all brand new stuff and for it all to be new, because it's going together as a new car. And speaking of, in the bleak midwinter, my dad, one day I went into his house and he'd rebuilt the brakes on his kitchen table, and this isn't their final colour, because when I get the rear brakes, which I don't have yet, we'll paint them all up to match and make them all pretty. But for now, this is all heat resistant stuff, and it looks really good, and it's a load more cleaner than it was, because my dad couldn't bolt rusty parts, which they weren't bad, were they?
Oh, no.
But they were just a little bit scruffy. They were like brand new, really, but they just needed a bit of a clean up, and you couldn't bring yourself to bolt rusty parts onto
it's essentially a brand new car.
Yeah, exactly, a nice shiny new car. So until they get the new paint, and until I order the new paint, because I want a fancy colour, we have fresh, clean brake calipers, which is nice. We do need to replace the hoses, but for now. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to subscribe for new videos every week. One of the reasons why we use the NB top arms over the NA top arms is that they have a little tiny captive nut in them, so that when we get our braided brake lines, we can attach a little P-clip and it just keeps all your brake lines neat and nice, which the NA arms don't have. And I like that. It's a cool like little feature that just makes for a tidier wheel well, rather than having a big long brake line dangling. Thoughtful Mazda. But for now, I'm going to put it like that. Right, shall we get some wheels? Go on then. Dad has bought some plastic caps because having exposed tubes is a really good way to bang your head on it or something. Can you not hit things with your hand? I always worry about you hurting your hand. And it finishes it off, it does. But I do have a plan for the future for those. But for now, at least it finishes it off a bit. Feel better?
Yep, loads better.
Stop someone banging the head on the end at least for now. And it also seals it off. Those wheels really need a clean. Oh. There we go. No wheel spacers, no bolt-on brackets, no bracket to a bracket, no adapters. That's the difference between an engineered car and a modified car. And don't forget that this suspension is a kilo lighter per side than the original Mini GTM suspension, with twice the travel. I'm a very happy boy. Now, we need to lift it off this table because this is the last time it will ever be on this table. And if you haven't noticed, I'm a bit giddy. I feel really weird today. I feel really like nervous but happy. I'm wildly excited to see the thing that has been in my head for decades actually be a thing. And yeah, I'm no longer that person stood on a chassis table. Remember the time when I stood on a chassis table with like 4 legs and I was like, it looks like a car. Heavy end or light end? I'll let you pick.
Go on. I'll do lots of it on the heavy end.
Oh, you're a good one. Right, let's shift the table further back first, yeah? Yep. Which is, one of the wheels on the table's gone, so I think you've got the knackered wheel. Yep, you've got the knackered wheel. That'll do.
Okay. Don't forget, we've got suspension, brakes, wheels, tyres,
Coilovers. Oh, hang on. Before we do this, try doing this with your Miata. You think it's light? There you go. It's amazing how it goes from being really big on a table and those wheels look really big, and then you put it on the car, on the floor and on the car, and it just looks tiny. There's only one bolt on this entire car so far that's really hard to get to, and it's the rearward engine mount bolt on this side. And one day, hopefully when I'm long gone, someone will curse our name trying to get to this bolt. Because once the mount's on it, you can probably, if you focus on the camera, it is that bolt there. And it's in.
When we build the rear suspension, we're still going to use the temporary spun down wheel bearings just for ease of assembly and disassembly.
We've messed up here because what we did is we bought a lovely new gym mat base for us to kneel on, and then what we've done is used it to put parts on. We've put suspension beauty over our own knees. One of the things that a lot of car companies do, like McLaren and Ferrari and stuff like that, do to reduce weight on a car is something that we don't have the option of doing, which is they special order all of their nuts and bolts. And like a 10mm bolt would normally have a 17mm head. And instead what they do is they downsize the size of that head, so they might make it a 16 or a 15mm head. And what that does, obviously, a bolt head, when it's tight, the bolt head is doing very little. So by making it just slightly smaller, you're reducing weight on the car overall. They might also reduce the height of the bolt head itself, because anybody that's going to be working on that car is going to be a professional mechanic using a full hex socket and all the correct tools that they should be using that are like confirmed for use by McLaren or Ferrari or whatever. There are cars that have only servicing personnel rather than home servicing. Now, that's something that we don't really have the option of doing on this car, simply because we're using like Mazda bits and Honda bits and stuff like that, and we're not custom ordering all our hardware. So what we've done instead is we've reduced the amount of bolts in the car overall. And that's one of the great things about this chassis style, is that we can integrate everything we can integrate, and we can, instead of having a bolt-on bracket that bolts from our chassis, like if you had a carbon fibre chassis, you'd have to have a plate in the chassis with captives, and then you'd have to have a bracket that bolts onto that, and then the thing that's actually going to bolt onto your chassis. And instead what we can do is we can weld like the bracket directly into our chassis, making it structural, and then just bolt the thing straight to it. So it reduces the number of bolts overall. Is it as effective? No, but for our purposes, it works beautifully, and it's a whole heck of a lot lighter than not doing that, because we've reduced the amount of brackets needed and we've reduced the amount of bolts. And as Dad's just pointed out, when he did the bolt list, he's made all of our suspension, 12mm with a 19mm head. Yeah. So that means that to take off, whether it's the front suspension or the rear suspension, all you need is a 19mm ring spanner and a 19mm socket. So it's functionally no different front to rear. It doesn't matter whether it's Honda or Mazda, it's two spanners. So one of the few little bolt-on brackets that we do have on this car is this little bracket for the brake line. And I could have drilled this out, and I may yet drill it out like here and here, you know, just save a bit of weight. But I actually I'm rather fond of these little brackets because they keep everything nice and neat. And so I didn't want to delete them in the finished article. Because there's nothing worse than a dangly brake line and then I'd end up making something. And these do the job, and they were designed to do the job beautifully. I think they hold the, it's not the handbrake cable, it's just the brake line. But, there you go, factory fresh. Like I said, I may yet drill them out a little bit just to save a tiny bit of weight. But they don't weigh that much. When I bought my engine, it was out of a Honda Integra Type R DC5, which is an RSX if you're American, and it has an Accord Euro Type R intake because that's the best intake manifold for a K-Series, from the factory anyway. But it also came with this AEM intake with this beautiful big AEM dry filter, which is about big enough to use as a hat if you have a normal size head. But this intake does not work with this intake manifold in an Integra. So the previous owners hacked it off to make it work, which I don't think it did very well. But that doesn't matter because we don't have an Integra, and it's absolutely perfect to fit here. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to fit it backwards. We're going to hack this end off. Well, cut it with precision. This is hacked. And we're going to cut it with precision about there. And we're also going to tidy this up because that's awful. And then we can finally have an intake on our car that looks semi-decent. And in the future, I might replace it with a more advanced intake that I make myself, and an airbox and stuff, but for now, it's really cool. And these AM air filters apparently flow fantastically. So we can now get rid of the horrible masking tape that's been on there forever and have a nice intake on our K-Series. Just before it goes on the floor, just so it looks nice. Because I was concerned about the distance between this and the throttle body being close, but I looked up the J's Racing intake for the Euro Accord Type R for that manifold, and it's actually closer than this. So I don't think there's a lot of room for it in the Accord because the battery's in the way. So I think we'll be absolutely fine. Huzzah. Now please bear in mind that it's got 170 kilos of engine in the back, and we don't know how much this engine weighs, actually, do we? Because it's an engine, a K-Series with shafts, gearbox, all the manifolds and everything, so cast exhaust manifold, power steering pump, air conditioning pump, all of that, weighs 185 kilos. But obviously we don't have a manifold on it, we don't have power steering, we'll never have power steering, we don't need air conditioning, none of that. So we don't know how much this weighs. But approximately the same as a Mini engine. However, there's no weight on the front. so it might be a bit, it might have a bit of a Carolina squat. Do you want to put some blocks under the wheels?
Yeah. Oh, that's easy anyway.
Yeah, it is. Not so bad, that. There you go.
Well, that's actually be enough with the block there.
We can always roll it forward, can't we?
Yeah. It'll roll forward.
It'll roll forward. The first time it's ever taken its own weight.
Yep.
Or it's on blocks, but... Hang on. Ah! Wait for me, wait for me. Right, come on.
Ready?
Yep. It's a little low at the back. we do think that we'll need some stiffer springs, and it is a bit low at the back, but that's cool. And it might be a Honda engine, but it was made in Britain and it is leaking oil. It thinks it's a Mini. I can't stop smiling. It's worth saying, episode 2, I lifted this car up from the front. Well, not this car. It was the old GTM floor pan with the old subframes in it and the old wheels on. And it had brakes and stuff just like this. And I lifted the front end and I could only just do it. But this has an engine in and the roll bar. And I can still do it. And some of the engine weight, I can tell you, is on the front. Because it's heavy.
Must be time for a cup of tea.
Yes, definitely.
I think we've earned it.
I'm going to drink a cup of tea and I'm going to stare at my car. And there's a button that looks like my face. There's a thing that's the full playlist of mosquito videos. There'll be an arbitrary video that I'll choose after this.
And leave us a comment.
And-
Tell us what you think.
And yeah, tell us what you think. Do you like it?
Do you not like it?
I don't care whether you like it or not, I love it. It's my car and I'm well happy. But I hope you like it too. I'm not building it for comments, I'm not building it for a show, I'm not building it for anybody else but me. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
I'm going to drink tea, stare at a car.